네. 그럼
We will now have the second session of the day. The theme of this session is eco-friendly green schools. Since we were young, we've been told that the earth is sick. We shouldn't throw away trash, and we need to protect the environment because of global warming. However, we did not really feel the problems in our daily lives. But once we begin to experience these problems in our daily lives, our perspectives change. We see that even in broad day, we see fine dust covering our skies, and there are polar bears who are holding on to the melting glacier. And so we feel an urgency with regards to the environment. So going beyond the slogan that we need to protect the environment, we're going to look at actual examples of using eco-friendly energy in schools, using forests as a way to preserve and conserve nature. And so we'll look at efforts to promote eco-friendly green schools. And in this session, the speakers are Park Sungchul, Research Fellow of the Korean Educational Development Institute, Kim Yong-ho, Principal of Kongang High School, and Ji Jung-woo, co-CEO of EUS Plus Architects. And the moderator is Rieh Sunyoung, Professor of Department of Architecture at University of Seoul. Please welcome her with a warm hand.
네, 교수님 진행
Yes, Professor, please go ahead. Yes, as was just introduced, I am Lee Sunyoung of the Department of Architecture at University of Seoul. The title of our session, I think, is quite interesting, Eco-Friendly Green Schools. And it's a welcoming sign that we can actually have such a topic for a session at this forum. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but whenever we ask someone to think about their childhood or draw a picture of their childhood, most of the people draw the natural environment. And there was a research on this. Louis Chaula, a scholar, conducted a research on the childhood of the people who had influenced the world. He looked at the environment of these people, and most of the people who grew to be influential were found to have the natural environment near them when they were a child. And also, when it comes to the imagination and creativity of children, Edith Covey, a scholar, wrote a book, and according to that book, children like the natural environment, and those who have lived close to natural environment had greater imagination and creativity. He looked into this issue and he found that children finds curiosity in the changing nature according to the seasons, and their cognitive ability goes up as they observe nature. So their curiosity is triggered, and that becomes a norm of their daily lives, to have this sense of curiosity. So these were studies about the importance of nature on people. So the green space, the green environment is very important. Nowadays, the children have not been able to go to school that often, and so I understand that the adults are concerned about their social skills, and everyone wants to go back to normal. And they say that the values of the neighborhood, of the community, is being revibrated. People want to walk about the neighborhood, enjoy the natural atmosphere. And so the open space, the green space, actually helps improve the level of happiness felt by the people. And that's why a lot of people like to live near forests and woods. We even have a word for that, subsekwan, which means that you live in an area that's surrounded by green. And also, schools are mostly in the walking distance. And so I think that this topic is even more relevant when we think about the current times. a lot of financial resources are going into the New Deal policy and for establishing green smart schools. There are energy conservation schools. We're living in an online new normal era. And these new schools are not just about utilizing digital technology at the school. So we are going to learn about what these green schools are about. We have 3 speakers, and I think that this is the ideal panel lineup. We have a academia, a educator, and an architect. I know it's not easy to change our education system because indeed it's a multidisciplinary effort. We need the designers of the education system and also those out in the scene who are actually educating the students. And also there has to be the involvement of the parents as well. But everyone are working in silos. And so I don't think that we really had an opportunity to have the people representing the different sectors get together and engage in in-depth discussions about what we need to improve the education system. But today we have Dr. Park Sungchul.
He will be talking about how the concept of green can take root in schools. And secondly,
Mr. Kim Yong-ho, he is a principal at Konghang High School. And he will be talking about his school, which has applied the green smart technology. It is actually a school that is combined with the local community, the village. So he will be talking about his experience and the feedback of students of his school.
last but not least, we have the architect Ji Jung-woo, who will talk about his experience engaging with the children through workshops for projects at schools. And so the key word or the value of participation, how that is being implemented in school spaces will be the gist of his presentation later on. So today we will have a very special session. Politically, policy-wise, I think this term green has been manipulated and overemphasized too much. But now we hope to look at the positive effects of these green efforts in the lives of the children, our future leaders. So we will go on to the first presentation by Park Sungchul.
예, 안녕하세요. 방금 소개받은 한국교육개발원 박승철입니다.
Hello, as was just introduced, I am Park Sungchul from the Korean Educational Development Institute. So it's a great honor for me to be standing on this stage. The other panelists and Professor Sunyoung are very famous people in Korea, and I also learned from Professor Rieh, and through her opening speech, she talked about the importance of this topic, and so I feel a bit burdened, honestly, in being the first presenter. But anyhow, I majored in architecture in university, and you may wonder what I'm doing at the Korean Educational Development Institute. So why is an architect working in this educational organization? But if you listen to my presentation, you will understand the importance of the concept of space in the education field. And there are two major topics that I've been working on. One is design, second is safety. So as you heard earlier, there's been a lot of research and effort going into design development. And as I was doing these design projects, what I was feeling was that I talk a lot with the teachers and the architects, and the teachers often talk about the need for windows or a whole wall being windows. How can we design those? For the architects, they talk about new renewable energy systems and other newer technologies most of the time. So looking at these examples or experiences, I was thinking that there's an essence to any green school. So this terminology, green school, I think cannot reflect all of the different ideas that should encompass green schools. Because there's so much more to just having green spaces. So broadly, I wanted to talk about sustainable schools or sustainability. And that reason is, so we are dealing with a very serious and heavy topic because this school space is where learning takes place, where the children spend most of their time during the day. And it's the students who have to learn in schools for them to grow as future leaders. So rather than just talk about green schools, I wanted to talk about sustainable schools because that would mean that these are spaces that provide continuous learning and growth for the teachers and for the students also. So this school space in this modern age, what kinds of requirements are being met by the schools? We have to look into that first. I'd like to introduce to you two different books. So there's been a lot of research on the educational and school spaces now, and there is the Third Teacher book. And when I read this book, well, of course, it's interesting title, but what's more important is that the subtitle or the smaller title is more interesting. It talks about 9 different design methods to change the pedagogy and learning. So design is important, but the safety, health, and other concepts that we dealt with in the past, we have to move beyond that because the design is directly linked to pedagogy and to learning. And so another book that I'd like to introduce to you is this. So a New York architect had written this book. And it says Blueprint for Tomorrow. And the subtitle is student-centered education. So reconstruction of the school space for education that focuses on students. So if you ask me, what is the methodology that we should be implementing? It is that the students have to be at the center of education field. So the agency concept will be very important here as well. In 2018, in fact, I also did a research on developing these designs for schools. The core concepts are, as you can see here, so I analyzed the revisions to the education plan of the country and what kinds of spaces, what kinds of designs would be necessary to implement them. You will see that what's important here is that there are a lot of different structural spatial components that are necessary in any school. This means that in Korea, our spaces already reflect the so-called future-oriented spaces that are being implemented in the advanced countries. So school, the essence of school space is it's a space that is used for learning, for classes. So that is the beginning. Reversely, we can say that when this spaces even if the spaces change, if that is not directly linked to how the classes are conducted, that's not going to be very helpful. Maybe previously it was, but in the 21st century, it's not feasible anymore. And so when the spaces change, it means that the way classes are conducted have to change accordingly as well. So this school space, we have that basic understanding. Then what does a green school mean? That's the next question that we have to consider since we already understood the broad framework. So there are different aspects to consider, but looking at the title of this thesis, you will see that it talks about the sustainable schools. And these schools have to be used as 3-dimensional textbooks. So it's not just that the need to have windows installed, but these windows have to be used as textbooks during classes. And that would be one of the requirements in the 21st century schools. So passive versus active elements, how can they be reflected in the educational process? I think that is the main issue that we need to consider. So if you look at the policy guidelines, the policy documents on green schools of Korea, they already reflect all these requirements. It says that in terms of design and also linkages with education, there has to be a focus. The green schools have to have a focus to encourage learning throughout the space. And so last Saturday, I visited a school that was selected as a green smart school. And so I went to the school and they showed me this diagram and said that this green concept, they decided to apply it to the lobby area, and they say that that was their plan. So I asked them the question, so if you're going to have this courtyard, then how will this be used? This courtyard, how will it be utilized? And the teacher couldn't answer it. So I felt a bit that the situation is a bit unfortunate. So during the workshop, I asked, well, one of the teachers there was a science teacher, and my question was, during science class, what are the materials that you use most often? Since I'm not a teacher, I had to ask this question. And the science teacher said, I was explaining how the earth was formed, and we use a lot of stones. So different limestones and different types of stones are being utilized. And so in the courtyard, maybe we could have those stones, or we could have these stones used as construction material in the courtyard, so that during science class, the students can go to the yard and look at the stones themselves. And now, after listening to my answer, the teachers realized the considerations that they have to make in redesigning their school. So I was talking about the green school, and I want to expand that further to sustainable schools. And as I explained, through class themselves, through the curriculum, the teachers and the students, through their interaction of learning, there has to be a continuous growth for all involved. That is what sustainable schools means. So what are the components of such sustainable schools? Of course, they're very broad and deep. I cannot talk about all of the elements, but what I want to focus on today is in the schools. How can we make it more approachable, easy to access? In 2009, I visited the Thomas Elementary School in Virginia, US. And you will see that they received the LEED accreditation, LEED certification. And I was more interested in the ideas that the school design were reflecting. So there's a huge table in the center of the school, and you will see that the table is made from these gravel stones. And so, of course, there's an acrylic top here that covers the stones. But these gravels are, according to the explanation by the architect, was that while they were doing the construction work, there were a lot of gravels that they had excavated from the site. And so they collected the stones and turned it into a table. And in fact, when I visited the school, they were showing a video about the school. And the video showed the entire process of the construction of the school. And so as you can see, the materials that had been excavated at that time were not thrown away, but preserved in the school campus. And what you see here is the back of the school. There's a playground for the students, but there's a huge tree in the middle. And this tree actually represents actual trees that surrounded the school previously. And you find these trees not just in as a pillar, but you find them inside the building as well. So sometimes there are floor patterns that look like trees as well. So this designer, this architect, was envisioning that if we're going to preserve, if we're going to protect the environment, we have to begin from home. In other words, from the schools, where we can find a lot of natural elements. And so it seems that oftentimes people think that we rule nature. However, for green schools or sustainable schools, we have to think about coexistence and symbiosis with nature and not ruling over nature. This is an elementary school in Osaka in Japan, and in the middle hall of the Koyas Elementary School, you will see this corridor, and you will see wooden panels. So they look like blocks on the wall. And on the right side, there is an explanation of these wood. And this elementary school actually had transferred from another location, and there had there was a huge tree. And this tree was significant. There was a student who died from a car accident, and the teachers and the parents did a fundraising. And to remember or commemorate this student, they planted a tree, and over the years, the tree grew to be huge. And as the students as the school was relocating, they decided that they wanted to remember this tree. So they cut down the tree, and the tree was used as the materials to decorate the wall of the corridor. So oftentimes we are focusing too much on just throwing away things and to throw away everything from the past. But I think there has to be some sustainability in the design of our schools in the future as well. So just because you're building a new building physically doesn't mean that you have to throw away everything from the past. This is another example from Korea, from a school in Yeongwon area. And this is the wall of the one of the school classrooms, and you will see that there is a painting, and it reflects. There's actually a pavilion on top of the uh, mountain, and so the surrounding environment was replicated and drawn within the schools on the walls. And so you will understand the type of mindset shift that had occurred in designing this school. And this is another elementary school in Yangyang. Yangyang is popular for windsurfing. And so in this case, they were painting the walls of the school, and it's a painting of young kids windsurfing. And so windsurfing means that this is a very eco-friendly city, and so the children themselves participating in designing the schools was very important part of the rebuilding of the school. So it's the students themselves who did the painting and who participated directly. So looking at these examples, I realized that we really need to shift our mindset, because it seems that we are focusing too much on the technical aspect, just the energy systems, new and renewable energy, for example. But when we are redesigning a school, we have to look at the broader picture. We have to encourage the participation of all stakeholders, particularly the students themselves. So in terms of methodology, what should we do? Now we know the what and the how. What are the specific methodologies that we need to implement? And so we conducted a project in 2019 with Professor Lee Sunyoung, and these are the group of students who participated in the projects. So they were building these panels, and they were giving their ideas on what they want from the school construction. And since they are sixth graders, they would be graduating soon, but they felt that the project was still meaningful because they would be able to leave a legacy to the junior students in the elementary school. So if there is some grant project that will be successful, that's going to bring about great benefit to all the students. So what we need to focus here on is the entire process, and all of the stakeholders being involved over the entire period to have some mindset shift. And so I think it will require a long time for these projects to be completed and assessed properly. And so you will see that the students themselves participate in the creation. So that is what the green, smart, future-oriented schools should be doing. So the environmental aspects are also being implemented by the students themselves, which leads to development of a sense of ownership. So now the students would have that memory formed in them even when they grow up. So we should not be just constructing buildings per se, but we have to ensure that the teachers, the students themselves, all of the stakeholders, the users, to directly participate in this experience, so that this is going to build potential for them to grow further, to have lifelong learning. This school is Escalion Elementary School in Finland, and you will see it's very eco-friendly. It's eco-friendly because the surrounding environment itself is forests and a lot of ecosystems existing here. And so what about our urban planning here in Korea right now? Ecologically, there's so many limitations. So the teachers want to take out the students to the environment surrounding the school, but we can't find such ecosystems. So what's important is to have direct experiences in nature by the students. So we need to form that kind of an environment to promote education, to promote sustainable schools. And so environmental education cannot be limited to the field of education alone. So just because you give a session or two about civic rights doesn't make the students very responsible members of society immediately. So similar for environment, we need sustainable continuous efforts. So an example could be we could have a broadening of the green spaces surrounding the school buildings, for example. There are many different elements that will be reflected here. This is an example from Woodson Elementary School in Virginia. So this is a fabric material, and material is important because the walls that divide the different classrooms are made from fabrics. And so the materials, composition of the classrooms that I am studying in, it's always displayed so the students understand what has been used. And so what I emphasized earlier was that the entire classroom, the space itself has to be used as a textbook, as teaching and learning materials. So in the future, through these kinds of processes being implemented, we have to ensure that the physical spaces in the classrooms will be used more as actual materials for teaching and learning. So a sustainable school would have four characteristics. First of all, going beyond facility enhancement, it has to bring about change in the classroom learning process. Secondly, the students, the teachers' experience have to be built in the space. Thirdly, it's not just the classes, not just education, not just the activities, but we need to ensure that the internal and the external environment of the school will be ecological and environmentally friendly. And lastly, we have to ensure that these spaces will be utilized as 3D textbooks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Park, for your presentation. The schools is not just a physical building, but it in and of itself is a tool and a teacher for the learning of the students. So I think that was a very important message that you have given us. Thank you.
Let us now go on to listen to the case of Konghang University, which is known to have applied all of the aspects that was just mentioned by a previous speaker. Mr. Kim Yong-ho, please go ahead. Good morning. I am the principal of Konghang High School in Seoul. My name is Kim Yong-ho. Among the audience here, I'm sure that there are teachers and principals, and I feel like I am very privileged to be teaching at such a wonderful school with the wonderful infrastructure. Our teachers and I enjoy our time teaching at our school. Today I will be talking about the actual operation of our Green Smart School, Konghang High School. Let me explain. Here are some data of our high school, which pursues zero energy. That's our concept. Let me explain some of the statistics or information of our school. We were designated on August 1st. Well, we relocated to Magok in 2019, August 1st. The school was established in 1983. There are 27 classes with 3 special education classes. There are 630 students at our school. In 2016, we were designated by a design-centered new school by the Seoul Metropolitan Education Agency. And also we were designated as a village combined school. And by MOLID, we were designated as a zero energy building pilot project school. And then we relocated in 2019. Our location, as I mentioned, is Magok-dong of Gangso district of Seoul. The land area is 13,390 square meters. And also we have a land utilization rate of 97.31%. We have a 4-story building. We also have a basement. The amount that was needed to build our school, this is something that a lot of the teachers are curious about, because a lot of schools come to our school to find out what a green smart school is, and they ask about the construction cost. Usually I understand that it costs a little bit more. Our school construction costed 25 billion on average. To build a school, you need 15 to 20 billion. So our construction budget was a bit higher than the usual average. Before I go into the introduction of our school, I want to talk about the basic direction of the Green Smart School being promoted by the government. The Green Smart School aspires to go in the following directions. Because of COVID-19, schools need to change and the school spaces have to change. That is the basic idea of this concept by the government. There has to be change in terms of the teacher, and the schools have to be combined with the community so that the community can also enjoy the school facilities and infrastructure. So the direction for the Green Smart Schools are smart classrooms, green school, innovation in the school space, and multi-use of the school facilities. Let's go into the details. First of all, the smart classrooms. Now, digital technology is applied to the classrooms. We utilize digital technology so that we can bring about change in the pedagogy. We used to have a unilateral one-directional lecture, but now we are promoting students' participation based on the applied cutthroat technology. Well, that was the first direction for the Smart Green School. And the second direction is a green school. Architecture techniques that prioritizes students' health has been implemented at the same time. Energy self-sufficient green school has been established. The school utilizes PV solar energy. And so the school itself serves as a venue and textbook of environmental education. Number 3 is the innovation in space. When we think about the traditional schools, we think of the dark spaces and the narrow hallways and the small classrooms. But now the school space has to change. We need innovation in the space as well. So we moved out of the very unilateral, very consistent space that has been created as school space. We made something new. We created a flexible and creative space to prepare our children for future education. We converted the space to where learning, rest, and play coexist, and we have enhanced user participation, such as students and teachers in the design process. Also, the multi-use of the school infrastructure and facility. We wanted the community members to come and utilize the school infrastructure. We have strengthened education linked with the local community, and we have opened up the school facilities for the community members so that the members can come to the school to learn and also spend their time at the school. I talked about the 4 basic directions of the government as it pursues and to promote green, smart education. And our school actually combines the 4 basic directions. Let me first talk about the smart classroom aspect that you can find at the Konghang High School. Because of COVID-19, online education is ongoing. And so AP is now established in most schools across the nation. We also have projection TVs and short throw beam projectors at our school in all of the classrooms. Usually, I understand that there is one short throw beam projector for every 2 classrooms, but we have them in every classroom at our school. We have provided laptops to all teachers, and at our school, upon the request of our teachers, we have implemented the use of Chromebook. We have about 80 units, and a lot of teachers utilize Chromebook for their classes. We also utilize 3D printers. We have about 3 of them, and we utilize various smart gadgets for improving the educational experience of our students. Next, the green school. I think that when it comes to the green school, the greatest characteristic that you can find at our school related to this would be the implementation of the PV modules. We have the fixed PV and also the BIPV. This is the building integrated PVs. We utilize both. First of all, we have about 368.856 kilowatts per hour of PV modules being used. As you can see here, on our rooftop, we have the PV panel modules established. Along with the students, I am participating in a look around the school program. I take the students to take a look at the various technology applied to our school. So they are on a tour. Next, the BIPV. Not a lot of energy is generated through the BIPV, but actually the BIPV modules have been used as if they are the exterior materials. So if you look at the black, you will find that these are actually the PV modules. They look as if they're part of the exterior. And this led to improving the added value of our school building, and it also promotes the image of the school as a energy self-sufficient school. The local community members pass by our school, they look at the panels, and they remember that our school is energy self-sufficient school. So the modules have a promotional effect and benefit. Next, in relation to the green school, another characteristic is that we have a cooling and heating system utilizing radiant heat. We have visitors come and say that it's really cool in the summer and very warm in the winter. It's because if you see here, we have actually installed on the floor these special coils, as you can see on the bottom left. And so on the floor, the first floor of the atrium, we have installed PEXC-based coil for the floor material. This material is known for good heat conduction and strong property. And next, this is another unique feature of our school. I will touch upon this later on as well. But one of the characteristics of the space that we have is that the building is formed in the shape of an atrium. You can see that this looks like a shopping mall, one of those shopping malls that you can find, for example, in Yeouido. And we have this atrium shape at our school as well. From the first floor to the fourth floor, there is this open space, and also we have windows for the air to go up to the upper level. So we have a natural ventilation system utilizing the windows. And these ventilation windows are used for cross ventilation. We utilize the temperature gap of the atrium, and this leads to natural venting. Along with this, you can see the drawing of our atrium, and the arrow in red is a natural ventilation. And then the arrow in orange shows the ventilation utilizing the ventilation exhaust duct at the top of the atrium. We also have automatic temperature adjustment utilizing sensors. When we need further ventilation, we would utilize the exhaust duct to have stronger ventilation. At the Seoul Metropolitan Government School Health Agency, well, they came to our school to do research and inspection of the condition of our school, and our air quality was found to be quite excellent. We have a year-round clean air that the students breathe when they come to school. We also have a sun protection and illuminance adjustment using louvers in the atrium. The louvers are used to block sunlight on the upper part of the atrium. And next, as you can see here, from the first floor to the fourth floor, there is open space. There's the atrium. And through the glass window, the sunlight comes down, and this helps save lighting energy. Also, at our school, which is a green school, we have the natural ventilation system. We use the thermal energy, and all of these aspects help the children to be educated about the environment through direct experience. We also have real-time energy monitoring system in place. Monitors are installed in public spaces for the students to see how much energy has been produced utilizing our PV modules. They learned from this direct experience at school. Next, spatial innovation. I think that spatial innovation is one of the strongest characteristics of our school. A lot of people take a look at our school building and say that it doesn't look like a high school building. It looks like you're at a university, and like the shopping malls. You can see that from the first floor to the fourth floor, there is this open space in the form of an atrium. It's really unique. We have the staircases that leads you from the first floor to the fourth floor, and also these stairs connect the building together, and it's a very bright, pleasant ambience because we use natural lighting. That's a major characteristic of our atrium and our building. We don't have the usual hallways and the classrooms that you see at the traditional schools. We have long hallways, and this atrium actually has a number of functions, and I will talk about this later on as well, including the expected benefits. But at this atrium, we have the windows here, and also on the ceiling there is a glass roof, and the students can look up and see the changes in the sky, which is really good for the sensitivity of the children. Also, with the atrium, what we have is that we have a circulation route that promotes various encounters and exchanges. So the students can walk about and they can actually bump into their friends because we have this circular route. Starting from 2023, there will be a high school credit system or credit bank system that is implemented, and the students will be able to enjoy more free time while they're at school. That means they would need more personal space, and I think that the home base or the verandas or the decks are some of the facilities that the children will enjoy when that system is implemented. We have the circular route-based structure, as I just mentioned. And also, because we have open space, this actually promotes communication exchanges among the students. On the first floor, if you look at the photo on the right side, you can see the students singing together. They're engaging in these types of activities together, utilizing the space. And next, the multi-use of the school facilities and infrastructure. So this school I mentioned is a village integrated and combined school. What this means is that the school is utilized by the community members. We have the gym and we have a meeting room facility. Of course, there is a separate space for the learning experience, but on the right side, you can see that there is a separate building for the community members to also use. And then the left side is mainly used by the students for their school activities and education. On the left, you will see that there is a separate area for the students to engage in the curriculum-based education. And then there are different areas that can be widely utilized by the community members. And the two areas are actually distinguished and separated. It looks like a mall because they are connected together utilizing the stairs. So as you can see, we have separate space for the students for their official education, and then there is a separate space that can be utilized together with the community members. And also you see the arrows here. There are separate entrances that lead the community members to the facilities that can be used by them. So they do not have to use the entrances and share them with the students. The students have separate entrances. What you see in the photo are the entrances that the community members use to gain access to the school facilities for them. Expected benefits. Let me go into this part. First of all, the improvement of pedagogy utilizing smart classrooms is the number one expected benefit. Number two, we can create an environment that prepares us for the future education, including the high school credit bank system. And also with a very convenient and pleasant atmosphere, we can improve the health of the students and the teachers. Also, we utilize renewable energies, including PV and solar energy, and this can lead to the reduction of school budget. I think I left this part out, but as we have adopted the solar energy, we have 67.6% of our energy being generated by renewable energies. So this means that we can actually reduce the energy generation budget, and the electricity fees actually has gone down by 2.5 million won. And what is also important is that we can have people, the students, really have a very comforting environment, and we have seen school violence go down. The level of satisfaction of the school has gone up, and also we have been contributing to the development of the local community as well. This is the feedback of our students. I know I'm out of time, but is it okay if I can go into this part? Yes, very briefly. Thank you. I wanted to introduce to you more about our school as much as possible, so I apologize for going over time. But our students are very proud about our school. They say that they're proud of the school that is leading the Green Smart School initiative. They say that they enjoy the clean and convenient environment, and they said that they can really look and see and feel the importance of renewable energy in a time when we are faced with climate change challenges. And so these are our future challenges here. And we've received a lot of acknowledgements, a lot of awards. So please refer to the material later on. I went over time, but with that, I would like to conclude the presentation on the Konghang High School Green Smart School case study. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. As we can see in the feedback of the students, students tend to take pride in the school that they're affiliated with. And with COVID-19, we are spending more time indoors, and people are appreciating the indoor space more than before. In the major cities, I think that there is an understanding that the school can play a role to reduce the level of obesity among students, because the schools can actually engage in more activities. For example, if you have a mall-type school, then there's more space for the students to walk about. So I think that that's a plus side of this new approach. Also, in the media, there has been a lot of attention on the Green Smart Schools, because I understand that there is backlash against this initiative, but I think that this was a presentation that actually can improve our perspective about the Green Smart School initiative, which will help us prepare for future education.
Last but not least, we have the presentation by the architect Ji Jung-woo.
네,
In terms of the presentation order or the layout, I think we have an optimal construction, because the first presentation by Dr. Park talked about the broad situation and the overall direction. And we looked at the example of Konghang High School, which was an actual case example of an actual school. Today, for me, I would be looking at the finer details, the younger generation, and the spaces that are required for them. So my presentation will be a small one, but hopefully it will be contributing to our understanding of the kinds of spaces that are necessary for the much younger children in the future. When we talk about schools, well, we are architects, but we do try to stand in the shoes of the students. We do that through actually participating and engaging with the students, and it's an ongoing process. So this is what is called the participatory design workshops. We are talking about green or green smart schools, and in a way, you can say that the emphasis is not on the green itself, but we have to go beyond the political discourses, the controversies over these plans. I think the emphasis has to be on the students. So we have to look at the quality of the spaces and ensure that that is reflective of the ideas, the opinions, and the needs of the students. I will be presenting three examples from schools and two from outside of schools. In Seoul, there's an elementary school called Cheongsu School, and when we were building this school, of course, we do architectural discussions, but we begin from workshops with the students themselves. In Korea, we have what's called the Chilgyo game. So it's like a tangrami game in other countries. So these different geometrical shapes are used to ask the students about the kinds of structures or layouts that they would want from their school. So looking at these results, you may be wondering how we interpret these works by the students. We are able to read the desires, the needs of the students through their work. So they want connection among the spaces. Sometimes they would want some division. So you will see a general school layout, school building layout. So we are remodeling many of the schools throughout the country right now in order to reflect the idea or concept of green. So we see similar sizes, similar structures with any other elementary school throughout the country, but we gave it a twist. You will see that there are wooden ceiling structures that we established. For the first time in the country, there was a library made from the Hanok or Korean traditional home style building or Korean traditional architecture style made in Cheongsu Elementary School. And you will see that the classrooms are divided this way, but there are also connections connecting the different classes. So when needed, these spaces can be connected for continuous interaction among the students of different classes. So these spaces are being designed and developed, and we are showing you the actual result. So you will see that there are some higher elevated spaces within the classrooms, so some lower spaces, and there are wooden structures in the middle in the classrooms also. So the spaces are not all squares, are not all divided into the front and back. And so that's the kind of new approaches that we wanted to reflect. And these are all based on the creativity of the students themselves. And so students can look at new structures and imagine new uses for these spaces. So I think that's the kind of direction that we should be taking in the future. In many of the school buildings in Korea, they are comprised of the corridors and the classrooms. But the corridors themselves only act as a passageway. And so we wanted to give it a twist, and we wanted to ensure that the daily life or interactions can take place in the corridors as well. The second example is from an elementary school in Gyeonggi province. It's the Baekbong school. So from designing, it's similar for designing any building, but particularly for schools, for school classrooms, we looked at the surrounding environment with the students first. So there are farming lands, and there are also major roads, and we also looked at inside of the buildings of the schools. So you see the corridors and the classrooms divided exactly into half, and the corridors tend to be dark. And so how are we going to change or transform this space to ensure that this will become an integrated space for care for the students? And we did that workshop with the students also. And you will think that these students are architecture majors, but in fact, they're just elementary school students. And they were very active participating in the workshop. They would draw, they would make collages themselves, they would reflect their ideas. And those ideas were developed into three-dimensional prototypes, and there was an interaction with the architects of our company and the students. So we had asked the students what they wanted. So this is not just a one-way survey. We did the workshop as an interactive process of designing and giving ideas and receiving feedback. And so you will see that all the prototypes made by the students themselves, of course, how did we interpret those and how can we return them into actual spaces? That's the process that we had to go through. You will see that for one student, they were asking for a empty space in the middle for a connection. And some students were saying we need some elevations within a single classrooms. So those are some of the requests from the students. And among the stakeholders of school are the teachers. And so we conducted surveys with the teachers. We also had direct contact and we received feedback from them. So there were a lot of different activities and a lot of opportunities for interaction in our projects. And this is the end design that we came up with. So we were just changing a single classroom into a child care or care service space. And so this is a small school and with just a few number of students per class. And so I think this redesigning gave the school a more feel of familiarity. And you will see that the space is actually connected all the way to the corridors as well. So the dead space is now being utilized as space for learning and for playing. And so you will see that the space is used as three-dimensional textbooks or teaching materials. And so not just textbooks, but they're used as spaces for playing and learning as well. And previously, corridors were just for passing by, but now, with this change, the corridors are used as spaces of play and learning for the students. And so, with the teachers and the students, we went through this process. On the left, you see before. On the right, you will see after the design and construction. So, you will see the end result. You will see there are staircases and stands within the classrooms. There is a slide, and there's also a very closed space also. So this presents a wide scope of choice to the students, the users. Our next example is from Samgwang Elementary School in Seoul. It was built in 1917, so it has an over 100-year history, and the wisteria that was planted initially still lives. And outside of the school, you can find traditional Korean homes still existing. So this kind of environment, how is this affecting the students? I think that was the initial approach that we took for this reconstruction. So the students were coming into the classrooms not just suddenly. They were not being transported immediately, but rather they had to go through the neighborhood. They had to walk through the alleys as they were coming to school. So these were the activities we engaged with the students. The students themselves would measure the length and the width of the classes using their bodies, and they would engage in drawing sessions to build these kind of homes that they wanted to do, and they would write diaries, draw that and draw the types of houses that they want to live in. But in fact, this school did not have a triangular roof. But the students did draw triangular roofs. That is because that is the kind of homes that the students had seen surrounding the school. So the students had very different perspectives from that of the adults, apparently. And so the students themselves were building and designing the kinds of homes that they wanted to live in. And this my home, if you put them all together, becomes our home. And if you put them together further, it becomes our school. So our architectural sketches and designs and the ideas of the students were all combined together to come up with different kinds of homes within the classrooms. They would have some different angles and they would be three-dimensional. So we built them together and we now have a house, our home, that allows learning and playing to happen all in the same space. And these spaces become spaces for educational activities as well as a window to looking outside the classrooms. And also in the school spaces, there are not just the internal space, but there are external spaces as well. We have the sports field, for example. So do we need to have exactly the same type of field, sports field for all schools? And also for playgrounds, it seems that often oftentimes we find the same scenery, same design for playground. And so we wanted to reflect the ideas of the students and the teachers in these outside spaces also. They have to use nature more. More of the ideas and opinions of the students should be reflected. This is a playground of one of the elementary schools in the US, and my child used to go here. It's 35 years old, but very much used by the students, by the children and the neighbors and the residents here. So in the memory of the children who grow up, who's spending time in these playgrounds, it is very much alive today. And it's not just the usual playground swings and slides that you find here, but a French architect named Le Corbusier had designed this kind of a playground. You will see different types of very novel plays possible. In Korea also, there are a lot of artificial materials used in the playgrounds. Plastics that is disguised as wood or as stone. But we wanted to ensure that real materials, steel, stones, would be used, and that is going to bring about more environmental awareness and understanding among the students. So our play spaces has to be more diverse to provide more value to our students. And the fortunate thing is that we are heading towards that direction. I would like to share with you two examples. One is in Seoul Elementary School in Paju, and we did a workshop with the students, and we asked them this question: a playground is blank. And so we want to have these kinds of play in the playgrounds. And these are the answers from the students. They said, playgrounds are a bit dangerous places, but they comfort me. It is my life. It's where life happens. So obviously, we can't take these answers at face value. We need to have architectural interpretation here. So for a student who said, this playground provides me with my heart's rest, it means that from an architect's interpretation, we need to have some spaces for sitting in the playground. For example, on another question, the student answer, we want to have play in the playground without any discrimination. So we decided that we need to design a scenery, a landscape where everyone can come together. Again, in this project, we had the students do collages and drawings and 3D modeling, and we were able to continue to upgrade our designs. And since it's a new satellite city, there is the context of the private learning institutes or academies that were important. So you will see that on flat land, there are apartment buildings and the usual playgrounds with the usual playground equipments. But we wanted to change the playground and equipments used. So you will see that these are the types of designs that we had developed. So of course there is the backbone of the playground, and it's not huge, but this is a singular playground that you can find only here in this area, in this school. So the students realize that this is the playground that is unique to us, and more creative ideas can be developed as the children enjoy play in this playground. The next example is from Dongdam Elementary School in Seoul, and these are structures that are almost useless now, and so we had the same project with the students, and we collected ideas, the needs of the students, and through that we had the students form groups, and they were asking for television screens for games. They wanted ball pools like the ones you find in indoor playgrounds, and there were different ideas that the students had given, and we were thinking about, so how are we going to reflect these ideas in the new playground? And in this case also, we wanted to have very novel playground equipment, different from the existing ones in the country. And so you will see that it's the students themselves who design this, and they can be very creative in the kinds of play that they can do. And so the students gave presentations in front of other students and the architects. And so we had the backbone remaining, but we built new structures. We added tree houses, for example, and we completed this space. And the students themselves were involved in the construction, and you will see that the structure allows new types of plays. And so the children themselves will have to develop new play methods here and develop their own ideas of how they can interact with other students. So you will see that that has been very successful. As for the next example, there's been a lot of eco forests surrounding the schools, and this is from Taebong Elementary School, and the building was on a hill, and so the students found it very difficult to go up and down the school, and so we built a tree house this way as a connection between the building and the lower part of the school. And so these trees are not just enjoyed by view, but these trees are areas for play for the students. And so we gave it a three-dimensional aspect to the playground. And for the internal spaces, or we've been seeing more recent trends that encompass nature, trees. And they're, of course, good to see, but in fact, the students oftentimes take care of nature inside the buildings themselves, and they grow together with the nature. And so after we've gone through these projects with the students, we've been receiving a lot of good feedback. They said that my perception, worldview has changed. New things, new methods. I now am able to be creative when it comes to new methodologies. And a young student also told me that it's important to reflect the ideas of the students themselves in these projects. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. During a time of economic growth, we had the same uniform designs of the schools built throughout the nation. But now it's important for us to come up with creative ideas and reflect them. And thank you very much for sharing us with actual examples. During my class also, I had a student who did a project on rebuilding a bathroom in one of the, or a restroom in one of the schools in the region. And the student was telling me that the fact that the students themselves participated in this very small project gave them a sense of confidence that their opinions mattered. And so, although these are just small projects, they can have huge impacts in the growth of the students mentally and physically. So, thank you very much for those excellent presentations.
So we heard the wonderful three presentations from our three speakers. And every time we have these types of presentations, of course, there are questions that follow. The questions are evidence of how impressed the audience has been by the presentations, how touched they were. During a short period of time, we were able to receive a lot of questions from the audience. And so let me read the questions, and perhaps maybe we can hear the answers all together in order to accommodate many more questions. So first, this is a question. Well, there are questions for all three in general, and then there are individual questions to each speaker. But because of the time constraint, maybe one person can answer the question for all three, or maybe two people can answer. We will not go into a discussion on that topic, however. So There are 10 questions in total, and I would like to read the questions and also share the important questions on the screen. First, the questions for all three speakers. In European schools, they got rid of the desks, and rather, we can see that there are more schools that are teaching the children in a very comfortable environment, perhaps in nature. Is there such an example in Korea, and do you think that this type of learning experience can be possible in Korea? Yes, we are supposed to share the questions on the screen. Everyone could read the question, right? Would there be someone who would like to answer this question? Yes, Mr. Ji?
네,
To share with you an actual project that I worked on, and this project will be completed 2 days from now. It is in Hwaengsong in Gangwon Province. It's Gonggun Elementary School, and they do have the regular desks and chairs, but in the middle part of the classroom, there are stands for common usage, and it's on the first floor, and so it's connected to the backyard, and so you can utilize the backyard for classes watching the mountains around the school. And so the folding partitions and other flexible materials have been utilized. So depending on the pedagogy, you could have very versatile use of the space. So yes, you share with us a very specific example. Thank you very much for sharing with us that possibility. So the second question also goes to Mr. Ji Jung-woo. In collecting the ideas from the students, I think it's very impressive that you continue to do that in the actual building projects. What would be the most difficult challenge when you try to reflect the ideas of the students or children in the construction? I think the biggest challenge does not come from the students themselves. The biggest challenge is our interaction with the adults, because there are some regulatory limitations, there are some biases and prejudices that the adults have. And I think a way to make a breakthrough in that challenge, that idea itself comes from the students, the children themselves. So as you saw in my presentation earlier, the students would give their ideas, and it's important to have good architectural interpretations. And we always have that in mind during our projects. The next question is also for Ji Jung-woo. The process of designing new spaces with the children themselves is very impressive. But most of the time, it will be applicable for smaller scale students. But when you're remodeling a massive or a huge scale school, how do you do idea collection? Whether the student is a big school or a small school, the number of participants to these kinds of workshops obviously will be limited, because you cannot have all hundreds of students participate. I think the biggest one we've had is having 200 students participate in a single workshop, but it was very tiresome and physically. But what's more important in these projects is to ensure that the students who are motivated to participate have the opportunity to participate. And as we saw in the presentation by Dr. Park earlier, even if this is not a space that I can use the next year, it would still be okay even if I graduate, because I'm leaving a positive legacy to the junior students. I think that kind of a mindset among the students was very important. And it's these students, that these active students would play the role of a mediator in trying to collect ideas from the other students. So I think these kinds of experiences were very important. So consideration, leadership, collaboration, I think these are all of the different values that can be developed through these projects. Thank you very much. The next question is for Dr. Park. So the schools should not be erasing the past, but be spaces for coexisting with the past. I think that was very impressive. Are there excellent examples you can share with regards to green, smart future schools? There's nothing that immediately comes to my mind at this moment. As for the designs that we are trying to implement in Korea right now, I don't think we've gone as far as reflecting all of those concepts fully. But honestly, if I had to share a specific example with you, remember I talked about Hyunnam School in Gangwon Province or Jucheon Middle School during my presentation. I think in these schools, they're already using the surrounding environment, and some of these concepts are being reflected, at least in terms of values, they are being implemented here. In terms of the specific designs, I mean, there are a lot of budget and other limitations which hinder the full implementation of all of the designs that the stakeholders want. But at least some concepts, some values are being implemented through these projects. And I'd like to share with you my thoughts on the earlier question. With regards to the high school credit bank systems that we will be introducing in Korea, well, when we are trying to implement these projects, we're not really focusing too much on the furnitures in the new schools, green smart schools that we are envisioning, because if there are the traditional test desks and the chairs, I mean, when the students look at these furnitures, they immediately think, oh, it's just studying. I have to sit down and study. So we're trying to use wood slabs that you would find in Starbucks, for example. So we're trying to introduce tables that you would find in cafes, for example, in these new schools, because we wanted to tell the students, send a message that this is an area not just for studying, but for play, for intermingling, for resting. So outside of schools, these students are able to engage in diverse activities very naturally. And I personally believe that the students should be given the chance to enjoy all those different activities even within schools. And so we don't purchase the regular tables from the procurement office, for example. So there's the Chia High School in Gangwon Province, for example, where we have introduced new types of furniture. So having these forward-looking ideas implemented in the projects, when you do that, of course, there are many challenges, including budget and other regulations that you have to overcome. Thank you very much for sharing that.
So we have many diverse questions, and the next question is for Mr. Kim Yong-ho. With the Green Smart Future schools, you talked about the four major philosophy, and its openness, also exchange with the local community are two of the philosophies. So can you explain about how Konghang High School is communicating with the local community? And also in the process of the Konghang High School becoming a green smart school, how was the views of the students reflected in this process? So the first question was about how the school is interacting with the local community, and number two was about the participation of the students. Yes, thank you. In 2019, our school relocated to our new location. And for the local community, we were about to open up our school facility and infrastructure, but then we were suddenly hit by COVID-19. And so we had plans to open up the school, but there were limitations due to the pandemic. And so, unfortunately, In fact, we have not yet been able to invite the local community members to come into our schools. And I wanted to talk about that during my presentation, but I was not able to. So in the future, we are planning to host lectures for the seniors to teach them computer skills, for example. And also we want to open up our gym. We have outstanding visual video room, audio video room. And we also have a meeting facility which we will open up. The gym is very large. It's very good facility that we plan to open up to the community. This might sound like an excuse, but because of the pandemic, we were not able to actively open up our facility to the local community, but in the future, we are planning to do so. In terms of the second question, in maintaining and developing our school as a green smart school, how much of the students' opinions and views are reflected? That was the question. The heads of the schools, the managers of the schools, meet with the student representatives 4 to 5 times a year. We have a time for communicating with the students, and the students are asked about their level of satisfaction with the school. For example, the learning environment and also the facilities are some of the areas that we ask the students' opinions on. And so based on the feedback that we collect, we try to improve our school. And this is not a question, but this was not raised as a question, but I did want to mention this. After becoming a principal of the school, I have been feeling this, and the teachers have said that they have felt this as well. But the school, before it relocated, it was located in Gonghang-dong of Gangso District. At that time, the students spoke very violently, and there were some issues between the students and the teachers. There were some confrontations. The teachers were quite upset with the language used by the students and how the students tried to violate the teacher's authority. But now we can see that after relocation, the students, they have much brighter expressions. They say hello all the time. And we can see that there are no students that seem like juvenile delinquents, for example. School violence has greatly decreased. And if you look at the attitudes of the students in general, we can see that there has been a shift towards a more positive attitude. So I think that with the spatial innovation, and as we have adopted the direction for green smart schools, we have seen positive impact on the students. The students have been gradually changing. So in that sense, I believe that this initiative is quite positive and effective. I believe that the children should be quite proud of themselves. I'm proud of our students. Thank you. Yes, so the people make the buildings and the buildings make the people. So I think that that's what the principal said. Mr. Kim, we actually have 2 more questions for you. The design of the atrium is quite impressive. On a clear, sunny day, I'm sure that the school will be quite bright. But during the snowy, rainy weather, the building might be a bit dark. So how do you deal with this? I'm a graduate of Konghang High School, and there's a special education class there. In 2007, I took classes with a student who needs a wheelchair. In the new school building, can the friends with special needs move about without any limitations? How about the mobility side? Can you answer this question? Yes, the atrium Well, I want to invite you to come to the new building. We will give you a tour. We welcome you. Whenever the visitors come to our school, they are quite surprised. They look at our atrium and they are genuinely surprised. It's a very large space, and from the first floor all the way to the fourth floor, we have the open space, and the natural sunlight comes down on a sunny day, of course. And the question is about the rainy days, the cloudy days. Of course, the architects have prepared for this. If you look at the gym, there was a 400-watt large lighting on the ceiling. And you will find that we have these types of lightings on the first floor ceiling. So, for example, yesterday was a snowy day and cloudy. And on those days, we would light up such lights. We have no problem because we have the illumination. And the graduate of Konghang High School, welcome. It's nice to hear from you. At present, we have 2 students using wheelchairs, and these students feel no inconvenience in utilizing the school facilities and building because we have 2 elevators in the building. The students can move about utilizing the elevators. They can move freely from the first floor to the fourth floor. And like I mentioned, there is a circular route or structure within the atrium, and the hallways and the corridors are linked together. So even if you have to use a wheelchair within our school building, you can move about. There is no problem with the mobility. Everything is connected together. And so all students can enjoy school life in a very comfortable manner.
I think the graduate, it would be best if you have the chance to visit your school, your alma mater, and you can also share that information of the progress of the school with your other peers, and that would be best. So we do have one last question. This question is for all our speakers. Thank you very much for helping me enhance understanding about a true green school. So there are some students who do not want to have the improvement of the existing facilities for the future generations. So we do have actual cases when the parents resist refurbishment or improvement projects for the existing schools because they do not want the current students, their children, to have to temporarily study in containers or other makeshift buildings. And this is causing a lot of conflict in the local community as well. I think these are issues that we face oftentimes. This has always been the case in the past. But however, if we do want to head towards a better future, we need to take time to introduce new energy, new resources. But it's not an easy process to try to persuade through communication. And so maybe we can hear the answer from architect Chi Jung-woo first. So I think any small idea would be helpful in making finding a path forward for this problem. Although it cannot be a broad solution, there's one idea that comes to my mind. The process of the construction itself, I mean, we have to ensure that the incumbent students are able to reap the benefits either through play or studying during the construction. So, for example, having the students themselves give ideas And these are actually once in a lifetime opportunities for many of the students, unless you're building your own houses in the future, right? So having group tours, for example, for the students, for the local residents, I think that could be easy. That could be one way to persuade the participation. And so I think that goes beyond just simple educational effect. I think we need to develop these kinds of ideas for direct participation of all stakeholders.
Mr. Kim, do you have anything to add? You did speak a lot before. Well, I am teaching at the school, so I would like to add a few remarks. Now, I do understand the concerns of the students and the parents, but nevertheless, for the future of the students, for the next generation of students, I think that spatial innovation is indeed very important, and it's the direction for the future. At present, if there is renovation taking place, then of course the current students would be impacted. However, if you look at the modules that will be utilized during the construction process, these are actually outstanding facilities, so the parents do not have to be concerned. Of course, there is the noise issue. There will be noise when construction continues, but probably most of the construction will be utilizing the summer vacation, the winter break, and also the weekends, I'm sure. And also in Seoul, I understand that there is strong opposition, and you probably know about it because it has been in the news. There is strong backlash, and one of the reasons for this is because of the backlash against innovation schools. Of course, there is the strengths, and then there's the weaknesses of the innovation schools. But I think that people are concerned that the green digital schools will lead to innovation schools. But Kongang High School is not an innovation school. Those are different concepts, so please bear that in mind. And the Seoul Education Board has identified Sojin School and actually linked it together with the Konghang School. And the parents have come to look at our school to help the parents ease their concerns. And I'm sure that the more you learn about the school, then you will be less concerned. Yes, as a evangelist of the Green Smart School, you have played a significant role. Now, Dr. Park.
Your closing remarks, please. The Ministry of Education has formed a preliminary assessment committee to look into how we're going to implement the reconstruction projects for the schools in the future. And I often give this comment to this committee as well as in other opportunities, but there are some sections that are not reconstructed even within a single school. But the problem is that the focus is too much just on the area that is reconstructed. So we overlook the ability to utilize the non-reconstruction areas more efficiently. So what I emphasize is that we could do, of course, remodeling of the non-reconstructed areas also. So I always say that we have to think about how we're going to use the remaining spaces as a single classroom is being reconstructed. And also, we have to another thing that I emphasize is that even if we are reconstructing the school, there are some spaces that can remain. It doesn't mean that we have to remove or demolish everything in that space. We can just leave some spaces as is for continuity. So that's another suggestion that I give. And there's another fundamental issue that I want to talk about. And I did mention during the presentation, but the process is very important. And in the process, what is most important is to have reconstruction or redesigning of the curriculum with the teachers. And so it's not often that the teachers are given the chance to think about how they're going to reconstruct the curriculum, the teaching process as the rebuilding or reconstruction goes on. So if we don't deal with that, as Mr. Chi Jong mentioned earlier, this is going to limit our construction success in the construction projects. And so it's very important to have workshops with the students. But before that, we need to have some curriculum reconstruction workshops with the teachers, because that aspect is also very important in the entire process. So we have to think about the contents aspect. I think that was emphasized. So in the ongoing construction projects right now, or reconstruction projects right now, I do have some concerns as well. One of which is that, if we have just one or two projects that go on, but I feel that even if we have just one or two successes, small successes, I think they could have positive impacts in the future. And so when we carry out these pilot projects, we have to ensure that there is enough coordination with all the stakeholders. So in project A, for example, we could emphasize one aspect. In the next project, we could emphasize the other aspect to ensure success. For example, putting emphasis on the contributions from the local community for certain projects, and on gradually spreading the benefits of these green smart projects, green smart school projects, would be very beneficial, because it could show that this is going to be indeed a win-win project for every stakeholder involved. So we need to accumulate these kinds of experiences more in the future. We receive a lot of very good questions, and I think that is because we've had excellent presentations to begin with. We had educators, architects, scholars, and planners all come together for this session. And we hope that we will have more of these opportunities in the future, so that we can find clues to making a breakthrough to the current impasse, as we continue to exert our effort to build schools that will be fostering the future leaders, who are our children, who are our students. So today in this session, we looked at eco-friendly green schools. It's a bit of a soft topic that we began with, but in terms of the contents, I think they were very insightful. So I'd like to thank all of our participants, in particular to our speakers, three speakers. Thank you so much. And with this, we will conclude the session. Thank you.
네,
Yes, we talked about innovative education environment. Thank you for your insights. The green schools mean sustainable schools, and schools where students want to study and enjoy their time with their friends. Once again, a big round of applause for this four people on stage. We will now enjoy lunch, and we will reconvene at 2:20. Thank you very much.